I've never done a film where I've really tried to like make a festival push. I think this is the first film I've done where like I felt like I really like had a chance at making a festival push. So it's like a totally new environment, like navigating that. Like I always say to people, like, it almost feels like applying to college again in some ways.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Moving the Mountain, a creative leadership podcast. Today's guest is Cole Paul, talented young filmmaker in the Providence, Rhode Island area. Is that correct?
Correct.
Awesome. And we're going to be talking about his latest film, A Lost Sense. Cole, thanks for coming on. And also thank you so much for this lovely gift.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to do it. Really excited to be here.
This is actually sick because we have a new studio upstairs, and I was just saying, I was like, we need some artwork in here. So it's going to be perfect. Or maybe it'll make its way on one of the studio walls out here.
Yeah. Luis Morales, all your graphic design needs. Great guy.
There you go.
Killed it.
So before we get into the film, which I'm excited to play a clip for the viewers.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about you. How old are you?
Yeah. So I'm 22 years old right now.
Okay.
And I've been in the filmmaking world since I was like, I'd say taking it seriously and doing things professionally since I was about like 15 or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many films have you done? Which one is this?
So in terms of like my personal shorts, this would be number 4, I want to say. But in between that, I've done like some commercial projects and have done a lot of shooting for Move Mountains and some other companies as well. So in terms of like professional work, this is probably much more. But in terms of personal projects, yeah, it's number 4.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I know we were introduced through a mutual friend who has worked for us over the years. And you've worked for us for a few times too, doing some like commercial work, some wedding work. You've worked at Steer. But this is really your passion, right? Filmmaking? Yeah,
definitely. No, filmmaking is the thing for me. And so I feel like in terms of the way I work in like my professional life, I'm just trying to like work in filmmaking in professional context so that I can then kind of funnel that into like, filmmaking in personal context, which is like what really excites me.
Yeah. And how do you strike that balance? As a creative, right, kind of knowing what you want to do. You want to make films, which you can always do, but I think a lot of filmmakers want to be able to do their passion as they're living. Is that a goal of yours to go there? Or is it, hey, whatever I do as a living is totally fine and I'll always have this passion of making films?
Yeah, I think for me, it's sort of like learning to kind of combine the two of like, okay, where can I bring my personal interests into my professional environment, and how can I bring sort of my professional things and where I've learned lessons into like my personal projects. I think ultimately for me, as like I see myself moving forward, I definitely want to be, directing films, doing something creative, whether that's in more of a commercial space or a personal space. I don't think it's really like a big thing to me. I'm really in it just for like the love of the game. Mm-hmm. I think, having more creative control is always more fun. But I think it's like really about, I think a lot of people want to separate them. Or a lot of people even like, I know for some people they'll say like, oh, like if you want to make films, like just like get a normal job, then like make films on the weekend, which is cool. Like I think it works for some people, but I think for me, it's like I've gotten so much out of my like professional settings that I've worked in. So like most of the crew on this movie was like friends that I've either met through filmmaking or like working on different sets together or shooting together. We had Yan from Move Mountains like doing costumes, so like I wouldn't have made all these connections. I wouldn't have been able to assemble the crew that I assembled without, being plugged into that professional world of sort of filmmaking, whether it's, in the wedding space or the commercial space. So it really like, I think the best way that I've been able to do things is, the short answer is just like find angles where they can both help each other and make it sort of one thing, like I'm filmmaking, whether it's, a commercial space working on a set or, working on my own project.
Right. And I will say that kind of working on project rates in the commercial field, you do have a little bit more time versus working a full-time 40, 50 hours a week job. It's a little bit more challenging, I would say, to probably find time to have passions or any passion at all.
Yeah, it's definitely, film is definitely like a consuming beast for sure. But yeah, I think sort of like, I think one thing like with this film, like I was planning and saving money for it for a while. And so I think like sort of the more far out you can plan for yourself, which is like, I feel like as creatives and artists, sometimes that's like really hard, is like being organized and planning things. Like
Mm.
the more you can maximize sort of your chances and your potential of like making something that's like really cool to you.
And how much did this film cost to make?
So this film costs, so production costs probably about, let me run it through my head here. Production was about 3,500,
Wow.
and then post production was ended up being probably close to another like 1,500 on top of that. So about 5K to make.
Yeah, some of the CGI in it, if that's, is it CGI?
Yep. Yeah.
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 I was impressed. I was like, looks really cool. Is that something, where did you find that artist? Was that something you found on Fiverr?
Yeah, yeah. So that's actually a friend of mine in Mason who we've mentioned, Josh Parsons,
Oh, yeah.
who, yeah, so he has his own sort of post studio, mostly focusing on VFX in New York now, which is really cool. But he used to be Providence based, so that's kind of how I met him. And yeah, I sort of was able to reach out to him, kind of like pitch him the project and what we're going for. The project was really exciting to him because most of his stuff is like all CG or like completely animated. So he was really excited to work on something that was like taking place in the real world, but bringing in those like VFX elements into that. So it was really great working with him. Yeah.
And how do you feel about that, right? So you mentioned you are working with like some friends, right? And it's a little bit of a passion project, but is this exclusively, do you feel like your project?
I think so. In terms of, I'd say yes and no. So I would say, yes, it's my project. In terms of like, I conceptualized it, I wrote it. I think that's the root of all stories, is like writing. So like, it feels very much like mine in that way. But I
Yeah.
think one of the things that sort of surprised me, and one of the things that I loved about working in this way, is this was my first short film where I was like really like bringing on like a full like crew, which was so awesome to me. Like I wasn't the guy with the camera anymore. Like Satya Sullivan I had as our DP, and she's amazing. So it was really cool, like just seeing all these other parties bring in their sort of takes on this, concept that I had created, but they're bringing their own things to it. And I think that was like one of the most beautiful things about the project. It was just like all these people that I loved, and we're all around sort of the same vision, but at the same time, like everyone has their own takes, their own ideas. And that's like, that's the dream right there, right? Is like, and I think, I've felt almost the most excited, in production meetings. It's gonna sound weird, me as the director, but like there were so many times where like I wasn't talking, and I loved that. And I was just sort of like, giving directions and providing like hints of where we're going. But so many times like I would just stay silent, and I would sit back and I'd be like, wow, like these people actually like are able to have passion around my idea. And that was just like, it was so validating, and it was so cool to see what everyone brought.
Yeah. That's really cool to, have people invested.
Yeah.
It's one
Yeah.
thing I think to hire someone and have them fulfill a role or do a job, but to have
Mhm.
someone that's like passionate and into it and bring their own ideas to the table. And you mentioned something too with this film, like you wrote it, and I wish I said it before you said that, but because when I watched it, I was like, it feels very, very true to you, and I really love the story. So how did you come up with that? How much of this is based on personal experience with like your upbringing, or is this just kind of total fiction and you kind of pulled this just out of your like imagination?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's all sort of from me in one way or another, and like sort of my life, whether that's direct or indirect, which in a lot of ways it is like really direct. The concept for the film actually came about when me and Mason Pimentel, who's also the producer on this film, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, we were having this conversation about how like, we both grew up loving like just like making movies with our friends. And one thing that we are both kind of talking about was how like as we're like getting older and moving into the professional world, and like you're realizing, eventually you get older and you start to sort of like have standards for yourself and realize like, you can't just go out with a camera and shoot whatever and it be awesome to you, right? Like you've seen all these other people doing like making films. It's like, oh, so this doesn't look like theirs, so this isn't as good. And like, so I remember what I said was, I'm like, yeah, man, it's crazy. There's like a lost sense of play to as you get older, and in filmmaking or with anything, like you lose a sense of play and it becomes like a serious thing, especially when you're trying to succeed professionally and make
Right.
it more than a hobby, which for some people I think it's fine as a hobby, and that's cool. But when you're not trying to do that, you definitely, taking it seriously has its pros and cons, right? And so that's where the title came about from, was just like thinking about a lost sense and thinking how you get older, like your perspective of the world totally shifts. And there's some things that, even though that's how life is, there's a lot of things you miss, which is like something in the short film, right? Like we see like the older siblings missing out.
Mm.
And then I think on like a more grounded level, yeah, I mean, I've always grown up with two siblings and I love them so much, but there was like just like so much chaos and fighting, just in our house, as most people with siblings I think can relate to. And so I was sort of like trying to like sort of capture that feeling of like fighting about like the dumbest things. I think about, especially with my younger sister, like we used to fight all the time and now we never do. And I feel like, we both grown older, and like it's just the things that make you mad don't make you mad anymore. When you're a kid, they seem like so intense.
Mm.
So I was sort of trying to capture that, and like, yeah, definitely basing it on sort of my experiences growing up with just the craziness of growing up with siblings, and kind of that difference of, maturity as you get older.
Right. Yeah, it seems like, with the characters in the story, there's, he's the outcast little brother that, doesn't have the attention of his older siblings, is a little bit imaginative. And I did notice that too with the older siblings, where they're a little bit disconnected. They're in their own world, and they got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Um, was there something that you were trying to say through this particular film?
Yeah, I mean, I think with any film, you can take what you want from it, and I think that's what's awesome about film. But I think for me personally, like what I was thinking about as I was writing that is like, you know, if you lose that sense of like wonder and that sense of seriousness, like there's just a lot that you'll miss out on. And I sort of like tried to bring in sort of the role of technology in that too. Like we see them on like their iPad or their phone the whole time, and how that's like a thing with kids these days, or with adults too, where it's
Mm.
like you're just like so focused on like the world in your hand that you kind of can like forget about, the world around you, and immersing yourself in that. And I think that was something I wanted to say. And then, yeah, just like, um, you know, just looking at how even as like an adolescent, like your mind can become so closed, so
Mm.
quickly without realizing it. And there's things that you'll lose.
Right. It's almost like too cool for life, you know.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, and I love that. That was the feeling that I was getting during the film, where it's just there's definitely a feeling, right, that it inspires, and that sense of wonder. I think that's the word that most best articulates it. And we should play a clip. Is there a particular clip that you want to play from the film?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Let's go to maybe where right before his brother sort of drags him out, and we'll see him on the beach a little bit. Sort of, I'd say this is sort of the climax where things really ramp up.
It's about halfway through when he goes
Probably a little more,
to brush his
just
teeth.
over halfway.
Okay.
Gavin?
Is this
brush
it?
your teeth and go to bed.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that? What? That light moving outside.
I don't know, it's probably just a car or something. Why don't you just go brush your teeth?
Wait, watch.
Okay, it's way past your bedtime. You really gotta go brush.
Wait. Again, there is. It keep again.
Gavin, it was just a car. Now stop and go. Actually, why don't you go make yourself useful and grab me one of those blue cans from the fridge?
Mom said this should that's the should drink.
Sean,
You seriously should not be asking him that.
you know what? He seriously should not be in this room right now. So how about you go put him to bed?
I don't feel like it. You do it.
Gavin, go away.
No, let me watch the light, please.
No.
No! Sean, be careful! No!
there. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, with the siblings, it's definitely like, I don't know what it is about siblings. It's like at that age, I don't know if it's just an age or if it's just easier to be angry than it is to care.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one of those things too. It's like, because like you're stuck with them and like you're not gonna like lose that friendship, or like, it's kind of like a built-in friend, like you can kind of treat them however you want because they're not going anywhere, so it's like I think that's like part of it too. I remember like because like my sister and I would always be fighting. My mom would be like, why don't you guys like treat each other like you treat your friends? I'm like, I don't know. And then like reflecting back on that now, it's like, oh, it's because I knew that like, my siblings weren't going anywhere,
Right,
like,
right,
so I
right.
didn't have to act nice, just kind of messed up, but that's how it is.
So, what are you thinking? What are you hoping to do with this film? I'm not really in the genre. Although I did kind of grow up in film a little bit. I did a short film out of high school, but are you just looking to kind of shop this around to different festivals and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big thing is like really just like trying to push for festivals. Just a few days ago, we got our first note back from a festival, Fantasy Short Film Festival, which kind of like specializes in like sci-fi and fantasy films. So really excited for that. I'll be showing in that on May. I believe it's going to be virtual this year. And then yeah, just still waiting to hear back from a lot of festivals, mostly like focusing in like the New England area. So it's kind of an exciting time kind of as we wait for that. But I think that's the big thing is like really, I've never done a film where I've really tried to like make a festival push. I think this is the first film I've done where like I felt like I really like had a chance at making a festival push. So it's like a totally new environment, like navigating that. Like I always say to people, like, it almost feels like applying to college again in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, that is I think exciting. And this, I haven't seen any of your other work, but this definitely kind of stuck out to me. It has a feeling to it. So I wish you all the best with it. It's a exciting time.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, we kind of touched on like your relationship to the characters a little bit and your upbringing, but any relationship to the scene that kind of takes place after this? Is it based on any real event?
Yeah, so I hate to say like I've not seen Aliens before, but it's always been like a fascination for me. I think like since I was a kid was something I've thought about. Like I've loved aliens in movies. Like I've always loved like science fiction and like in this movie I was really like thinking a lot about like Spielberg movies, like that sort of like science fiction, but with a very like human side to it. Like think about like E.T. or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Like I love those movies and I love how it's like science fiction, but it's not really focused on that. It's almost like focused on like the characters and the human stories. So that really like stuck out to me. But yeah, I think I've always been like really interested in aliens. Like just like think about like, I remember from a young age, just like thinking about like, could there be out there, like, is there aliens out there? And definitely like looking up at the sky sometimes and like, and wondering. So there's definitely like a real experience of that where it's like, like wondering, I'm like, could there be aliens out there?
And then what's this child's connection to them? I saw some subtitles come up. And I don't know if this like gives away anything.
No, go for it.
But is that because it seemed like, what was it? You are?
Yeah, so there's no subtitles actually. There's no dialogue there. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, because that was just Vimeo put in it.
Yeah, I think that might have just been Vimeo.
I was like, it just said you are, and I was like trying to place that. Like, what is he trying to say?
Yeah. No, I think with the aliens though, it's kind of like, and the way I wanted it to be is like there's nothing like special about him other than the fact that he notices and is there for them, and like in the same way, like those aliens are there for him in ways that maybe his siblings couldn't, like at the end of the day, he was just like trying to connect and have friends around him. And like, he couldn't find that with his siblings. So he's able to like go out and get that sort of sense of satisfaction, like first from the aliens. And then we see at the end, like kind of from within himself,
right.
His curiosity was like validated.
Yeah, that feeling for that need for connection.
Yeah.
No, it's very cool. And so you've never seen an alien?
I've never seen an alien. I'm still watching out. I always like think about like, I know a mutual thing about us, both big Blink-182 fans.
Yeah,
I always think about
they're actually coming like next month.
I know. It's gonna be so awesome. Do you have tickets?
I do. Yeah.
That's sick.
Are you going?
No, I would like to though, but I saw they were so expensive.
They were a little pricey.
But yeah, no, I'm really excited for that. I'm glad they got Adam back from like looking for aliens. But even like him, like I remember like that like really sticking out to me because I was just like I loved Blink 182 so much, like all throughout like middle school and high school and now, but like especially then, I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I remember like being like, you know, just going on like an internet hole one day on like the family computer because that's what we had. And like I'm like, what happened to Adam? Why isn't he in any of the songs anymore? And just like reading about him, like just like going out and looking for these aliens and how that was like such a fixation for him. It really like I don't know, it stuck out to me. I feel like it probably like subconsciously sort of like made me think like, okay, if you can just leave this awesome band for aliens, like could there be out there? You know, I feel like it definitely sparked something in me.
Yeah, I think he went through a dark time because he had I think some kind of operation and he got hooked on pain pills.
Yeah.
And he was always into aliens. I mean, there was a song "Aliens Exist" that he would talk about it pretty regularly. And then I think tensions kind of mounted in the band. He went off into Boxcar Racer, and then he did Angels and Airwaves, and then that's when he really like kind of just split from Blink.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were such a trio. It's like when they had I forget. I think his name is Matt something. He's from another band, but it just wasn't the same.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even consider those like Blink albums. I haven't
the
listened
California
to
one or whatever it was. I think it was. Yeah.
But now that Tom's back, it's like I got to see him one last time on tour. I saw him when I was 14 with my dad.
Yeah.
And that was interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I'd love to see him live someday. Look at the ticket prices, see if there's any I can scrap
I
out.
think my friend might have one for sale.
Really?
Yeah. if you're
Okay, definitely.
interested.
Yeah, give me the link to that. I am legitimately interested because I feel like it'd be so awesome to see them. I remember like buying their songs for $1.29 with my like little allowance that I got, like a couple songs every month. It was like that was it. But yeah, just like seeing that fixation with aliens definitely like I think it did something for me,
Yeah. I don't know where I was first introduced to aliens, but I had an encounter.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if I can put this on the podcast.
No way.
We were one time in my plat, there was something, right? But it wasn't like, it was like, that was something, but yeah, you could chalk it up to whatever.
Right.
But there was a time where we were with my friends in Johnson's Pond. It was probably a group of like, it was a big group, but we kind of split up somewhere in the water, somewhere by the campfire, somewhere inside. Me and I think two other my friends were in the water by the dock. And it was like, it took up the entire sky. Whoa. Where like literally the entire sky had these two big wings. It wasn't symmetrical. And then the wings were like almost like the Northern Lights, had all like these like crazy things like flashing.
Whoa.
And then it went from being massive to like zipping into a dot in the sky. And then from that dot, all simultaneously broke off in 3 different directions.
No way.
It was the wildest thing.
That's insane.
And the fact that there were like other people there.
Yeah.
Just watching.
And like, would they like back you up? Like
they would like confirm that story. It was like that crazy of an experience.
I think that's what always gets me is like you'll hear like a lot of people say like, like I saw aliens one time in the sky, but like, it's just like, I was alone in the woods or whatever. So that to me is like, okay. But like, when you hear people like multiple people saw something, it's like what was that, And I always go back and forth of like how much I believe in aliens or not. But like, it's like, if these people are obviously seeing some crazy things, I remember, I don't remember his name, but there's a guy, he has like one of the most famous like UFO stories. And like, he was like a lumberjack, like working in the woods. And basically like, they were like out there at night, him and like 7 other guys, and like this huge bright light. And like he thought it was a ship, and he claims to have been abducted, and like he was missing for 2 days.
Yeah.
And like, he doesn't remember anything that happened. And like all the 7 other people that were with him, however many it was, like all like corroborated his story. We're like, yeah, like this is real. This happened. And like they did like, they made sure like these people were like psychologically like sane. They did lie detectors, and they were all like good. So it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, maybe it wasn't aliens, but in that case, like what did all these people see? And where was this guy for 2 days? Like
right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, you hear a lot of those stories. I mean, if you kind of research it a little bit, of people being abducted, and some of them are pretty horrifying, where it's like, I feel like if something like that happens to you, you're forever changed. Your reality, your sense of reality is just you know, people that have like near death experiences, probably similar to that, or like,
Yeah.
you know, a bad acid trip.
Yep. Yeah.
Like your world is just the way you
shifts.
see like life is totally different.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of like kind of like to go back to the film.
Not
like
that I've
that's,
done acid.
no, yeah.
Not that
have
either
you?
of us
No, not me.
have done acid.
Not me. I'm pretty
You
vanilla.
spent how long in Alaska?
It's like 2.5 months. Yeah, that's what paid for this film.
All he
What
did
it?
was acid
Oh.
in Alaska. What else do you do in Alaska?
And then next thing I know, boom,
Trout
lost
fishing.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your time in Alaska like? And this does have a stark feeling to it, especially like when he's out on the beach and the color and the tonality and all that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that just kind of that sense you were out there? I think you were kind of going through something too, and you were on
Yeah.
a ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you pull a lot kind of from that, those feelings?
Totally. Yeah. I think like I really wanted to sort of showcase like the natural world with this film, because like that's like something that like I've always been like really passionate about. Like grew up like in Boy Scouts, like camping with my dad, and that was like some of like the most fun I had as a kid. And now like to this day, like I still like all my favorite like leisure like fun activities are just like usually like outside. Like it's so inspiring to me, and that's definitely where I feel like the most peace. And I think, yeah, I think like being in Alaska, like off the grid, and just like, you know, I was working on a salmon fishing crew, and like having these just like physically brutal days where I was like so physically drained.
Sorry, I have to stop you right there. That's such a strange choice for a filmmaker. What possessed you to go out to Alaska on a salmon fishing excursion for 2 months?
It was definitely like a spur of the moment decision in some ways, I think. Yeah, so I'd always thought it was cool. Like one of my favorite photographers, Corey Arnold, he shoots for like National Geographic. So I discovered him that way. I've always thought like he's so awesome. And like most of his work revolves around like the fishing industry and like documenting that. And he does a bit of it himself, you know, even now that he's like a super successful photographer, like he still does that. Just because that's what he likes and that's what his work centers around. So I think like I've always like thought that looked really cool. Cause like I said, I've always loved just like being outside, like especially like anything water-based on the ocean. So it always looked really cool to me. And then, yeah, I think this spring, like going through like a pretty bad breakup with like a long-term girlfriend, like that really sent me of like, okay, like I really just want to like get out of here and like reset, you know, and this was something I'd been wanting to do for a while. And I'm like, okay, I have nothing lined up for this summer. There's really no reason not to do it. So then I like ended up online on like a site called literally alaskajobfinder.com. This guy gave me a call, asked me if I wanted to be on his crew. And then like next thing I know, I'm like on a flight to Alaska.
Easy.
It is that
It's
easy.
that
That's the
easy.
crazy thing. Like if you guys want jobs, they're out there. They're easy to get. It's very good money.
Well, you made an important point, I think, where one, there's nothing that will like refocus you on your desires and things like your bucket list almost in a way than a breakup.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because you're kind of tied down. It's not like you could have, but it's unlikely that
Yeah.
you're going to be with your relationship. Be like, hey, by the way, I'm leaving for 2 months
Yeah. That never felt right.
to go on a fishing excursion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like looking at myself because I was like, I had a dilemma. I'm like, oh, should I go? Should I maybe just hang around for the summer? But then it's like, what am I going to do? Like, this is something like I've always wanted to do. I'm like, I have nothing lined up. Why not? You know, even though it really, and this whole thing like kind of happened within about like the span of a month from me, like not being sure what I'm doing in the summer, still in this relationship, to me, like having flights booked to Anchorage, which was kind of crazy. But yeah, it was definitely like a great experience all around. Like being completely off the grid was like great for me. Like I think that's great for anyone, like breakup or not, you know, like it's just like so like it was this like contrast of being like physically so drained because it was like usually like 16-hour days and just of constant physical labor, but like feeling probably mentally like the best and most renewed I'd felt before. And I'd have these moments where like I would have like what I would think was like, you know, looking outside was like a crappy day of just like, you know, ripping fish out of nets, like this grueling labor, but I'd feel like so amazing and just be like watching the sunset on this beach, you know, and it was like these really like spiritual moments, like feeling connected to God, just like out there. And so I think I definitely brought a bit of that into like a lost sense of like that sort of like the sort of supernatural elements just about, you know, and that sort of deep sense of wonder just that can come from like the world we live in, you know, like in this case, like it's sort of manifested as a spaceship, but like us in real life, like I don't think we need that, you know?
Right. it's kind of like our need to connect to the unknown.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really great way of putting it. Whether that, like I said, like this is more dramatized, but like in real life, like just like being out somewhere new, experiencing somewhere new, like connecting with like the world around you, I think is like so just like necessary and something we don't get enough of.
Yeah. I got two questions for you. Well, one's more of a statement, but the first is on that ship or boat, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Did you eat the salmon?
Did, yeah, yeah. Ate quite a bit of salmon because like it wasn't the
You
only
probably
thing
just
we
do
ate.
like sashimi right there. Like,
Yeah, I mean, some of
raw?
it we literally would bring it like just like we'd have like nets or like bags that we put it in to like sell to like the people who are going to process it and put it in cans and send it out. It's like 92% of salmon in the U.S. comes from Alaska, so it's like a huge operation.
Wow.
Yeah, and then usually we just like take like 3 or 4 each day and literally just walk up the hill. And then we had a lady there that would cook for us. It was like the captain's sister. She'd just slice them up, throw them in the oven. I had like salmon heart, which was crazy. Like we ate like all the parts. It was like
Wow.
really good though.
And now, did you stay with them too in like their own home? Is it that tight knit?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like pretty off the grid. So there's really like I that was one thing that I wasn't really sure about going in. Like I knew it'd be like in
Right.
nature, but like it really like I thought it maybe be like a small town, but it's really like this like cabin kind of along the coast basically that we stayed in. And this guy's sort of like it was basically like a little compound, and it's so remote. Like I flew into Anchorage, then took like a 2-hour flight in like a little tiny like 4-seater plane
Wow.
to get there. And that was pretty wild. Like the population of people that live there year round is like 51 if you Google it. And then like a lot of people come for like the fishing season, obviously.
Now,
But-
was that a little bit of a flight risk for them? Not really knowing you, finding you off this website, you're what, 20, 21 at the time, and trusting you out on this ship. It's probably pretty dangerous out there.
yeah.
What's that screening process?
So honestly, not much, which I agree with you. I'm like, there's a lot of risk and like, it cost the guy a lot of money if he needed to. So you'd have to do really bad to get sent home, which I guess is a comforting thing. But yeah, I mean, you're out
Did
there.
you have to sign a waiver?
Yeah, I did have to sign a waiver. And yeah, he just kind of calls you and asks like, a lot of it's, just are you willing to be there and learn, which I think is a lot like film, especially when you're first getting started is like, not necessarily your skills or expertise, but like, do you want to be there? And are you down to like listen and put in hard work? And
Right.
that was very much the truth out there. Cause like, I've never done commercial fishing before. I had a lot of like experience, like living and being in the outdoors. So that came pretty easy for me. But yeah, like all the skills, all the knots we had to learn, how to take a salmon out of a net. It's all new. It's all learning. It's a big learning curve. But yeah, I mean, there would be like some drama that went down and I'm like, oh shoot, like this kid probably would have been let go if it wasn't so expensive to like get flown out there,
Wow.
cause like, yeah, things can get pretty tense out there, especially when you're operating on like such little sleep. And things are so fast paced, you'll get yelled at pretty quickly. And like, yeah, some people definitely take that better than others.
Yeah, it's probably not your normal workplace where there's not a lot of restraint. If you do something, you probably hear exactly what you did at a volume that
Oh, yeah.
is equal to,
Yep.
the what it deserves.
Yeah.
Not the modern workplace.
No, there are no mental health days in Alaska. You just kind of got to get in there. But yeah, part of it is like just like just being able to take it and just be like, okay, like I don't think this is personal. I'm just gonna like fix what I did and move on. It's like you definitely have to have that attitude of just like being able to roll with the punches.
That's good. I feel like not enough people have that grit, especially like in our, with our upbringing, where it's like, hey, it's nothing personal. Like, so we're here to do a job. We got to get the
Yeah.
job done, and we're gonna do the job is the easiest way. And sometimes there's not a lot of place for your feelings.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
where the modern work office, I feel like it's all about inclusivity and the feelings and all this stuff, and
Yeah.
that's not really like centered to survival.
Yeah. So I remember just like it put a lot of things into perspective for me, like being on a boat one day. And I remember like I was literally out there, and I was like tired and grumpy, like you are a lot of the days out there. It's just how it is. And just thinking like, man, like I wish I was just on a film set right now, that'd
Mm.
be so easy, and not that like filmmaking is easy. Like filmmaking's pretty, especially if you're like working as like a PA or an AC, which I've done a lot of. It's like it's still pretty demanding, but I remember like thinking like, wow, like this would be pretty easy compared to this, just like get me back on a film set. That was so relaxed. And so like I think yeah, definitely like made some other things that I maybe would have thought were really hard seem kind of like easy in retrospect. Like it was like,
Yeah.
okay, like if I can do this, like that's like a cakewalk, like
Yeah. Puts things into perspective.
totally, totally.
I like that. I often find that too, where it's like this job can get kind of demanding, a lot of responsibility and
Oh yeah,
stress. And, I'll drive by people, um, on the side of the road, like digging manholes and like, jackhammering concrete.
yeah,
It's like probably making $30 an hour,
yeah.
and I'm like, I have no right to complain about anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it is tough, especially I think too, like here in New England, like film is a little different. You always hear like horror stories, I feel like out of LA and New York of like people like getting no sleep. But I feel like out here in New England, it's a little more, even in like commercial environments, can be a little more forgiving and low key, which is nice. It's cool that we have that.
Yeah, I've heard about film sets. My friend actually worked on one here with Fred Durst. It was done in Providence. I
Really
forget the film.
interesting.
The Education of Cody Banks. It
Okay.
had what's the guy from the Social Network?
Oh, Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was kind of it was like when he was like up and coming.
yeah,
He was just on the precipice of that, and he worked on the film set with him. Fred Durst was the director. You know Fred Durst?
yeah, yeah,
Okay. As it was kind of strange, but very long, grueling days.
yeah, yeah.
The film industry is like no joke.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely like a tough thing to sign up for. It's like one of those things, you gotta love it because if not, then like what are you doing?
Right.
You gotta love it.
Well, I will say this. I was you mentioned nature and kind of just reconnecting, and usually so busy. But I think it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday, Jan had gotten a flat tire. And I went over to his house just to kind of help him out.
Mhm.
And he's inside, and I'm just out there, kind of standing there, and just listening. And I'm like, oh, those are the birds. Like, and I like
Yeah,
look up, and like
yeah,
the birds are flying and chirping, and I was just like, yeah, like I haven't listened. I just haven't been out in nature and
yep,
just listened and appreciated it. And I don't know how long. And it's so nice. And it's like a nice day. It was warm.
yeah,
I was like, it's beautiful. I was like, kind of miss that.
yeah.
We don't do
Absolutely.
enough of that.
Yeah, and I think a part of that is like, like being outside, but then another part of that that really sticks out to me is like sort of like making time for like a sense of slowness, and
Mm.
like sitting in that and being okay with that. And like sort of like what I was trying to portray in like the visual language of this film is like sort of like yeah, like being okay with just like sitting in a wide shot for a while and just like sitting in that and slowing down.
Mm. I
was
noticed
really-
that even before you got into the living room scene, the opening shots, I was like, it was like, that was a long shot. And then you cut to another shot, and I was like, that was even longer.
yeah,
And it was nice. Like I liked it, but it like your intro almost slows down the viewer,
yeah.
like what to expect.
Totally. And that's what I really was like sort of pushing for and hoping for. And I'm glad that came through. I know like I was like really inspired by like, I saw a film called Memoria. And it's by, I'm going to butcher this. The director is like Apichapong Ursakul, and he's from Thailand. And like, yeah, I think it was like cool. That really blew my mind seeing it of like, all the shots, like insane long takes, but they're like just these beautiful wide shots. So you don't even like feel
Mm.
bad about sitting in them for so long. And that was like a huge influence on this film is like because it's so different than I think what I was used to, and seeing mostly American films, where it's like, especially Hollywood, all about like fast cuts and like keeping the attention span.
Mm.
And I think like, one thing like I felt like, it was a little bit hard to watch. It was a little bit of an adjustment, but there was like kind of this peace and this like sense of calm that came with that. And so I was like kind of trying to portray that in this film too, of like, yeah, like being okay with slowing down and just sitting, with a shot, and I think like that's important. I think in art, obviously I really like that, but I think it's because I think that's so important in life too.
Mm. Yeah, it's actually like made me just hearing you say that, it's like appreciate film again. I remember, and I forget the movie exactly, but really beautiful landscapes, wide shots. And I used to be a little bit more of like a film connoisseur, and
Mhm.
my friend Chris. Do you know Chris Knott?
I don't know Chris Knott.
He would often like just kind of give me films, and I'd watch him and all different types. And yeah, that kind of got me into films or
Yeah,
back into films. But to create again with like capturing beauty, and we do that here obviously in weddings, more
totally.
providing a service, but I think there's something to be said where it's just like you're doing something to like capture beauty and you know get a person to a certain or get a person back to a certain place.
Totally. Yeah, I think like always like, I think like one thing too, like this film has like really made me think about is, like for the first time, especially like being as young as I am, is like this is the first film where I really felt like I like had some semblance of a voice,
Mm,
that like felt like me and like sort of like, yeah, always pursuing like a sense of peace, I think is like something that I really want to do. And that's like sense of calm. And I think it's something I really want to do in art, but I think that's also because like, I'm such like an anxious person. That's like always what I'm trying to
mm.
work towards in life too, is like just like being in a place where I can feel like peace and contentment. And so like I really wanted to like, because I think that's something that like I struggle with. That's something like that I kind of want to show, or like give people a taste of.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I never really thought of you as a anxious person.
Most don't. Most
Yeah,
don't. I get that a lot. Yeah.
yeah. But like I said, the film does feel like very true and like very like you in a sense, and is really nice, well done.
Thank
Um,
you.
and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what else you come up with. But that's always the next. That's kind of the I don't know. Antithesis is the right word, but like, well, what's the next thing,
Hmm.
right? It's almost like the
Yeah.
opposite of what you're trying to evoke here with this film. It's kind of being in the moment.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely kind of have a couple things in the works. So like obviously like a lot of my energy right now is being put into like just like navigating like how do you market a film, and it's like something I'm totally like learning and like the festival circuit. So a lot of my energy is like still being put into this film. One thing I'm working on right now is like a photo zine of a lot of the pictures that I shot while I was in Alaska. So I'm really excited about that. I'm almost done with that actually, which is cool. And that's been almost like a nice break from the flow of like a lost sense where it was like I was coordinating so many different moving parts from pre-production through post-production of like, okay, I got to make sure this person has this aspect done, I get this aspect done, and it's all these moving parts. And the zine has been really nice and like relaxing because it's almost like been like a nice detox from that.
Therapeutic, yeah.
Yeah, where it's just like, okay, it's me sitting at my computer with InDesign open and just like, yeah, just kind of navigating everything 100% for myself. So that's kind of in terms of like creative projects, kind of what I have next. And then I think like trying to get back into like the discipline of writing too, of like, um, just like writing every day. It's like I always feel like writing is like going to the gym, where it's like if you have a routine and it's plugged into your life, it's like pretty easy and has a lot of benefits. But like to start going to the gym, that's like the most impossible thing to like think about, and writing's like that too, where it's like if you're actively like working the muscle, it's cool, it comes easy. But like that first day of sitting down, with a script open is like the hardest.
Yeah, especially when you're starting, you have no results. So
Yeah,
there's not
yeah,
much to be inspired by, unless you're getting your inspiration from other places. But
yeah.
writing, growing up, kind of I was a songwriter, and I would always have notes going,
Mhm.
journals going, because you always got to keep like working that muscle,
Yeah, yeah,
So I feel like the more you write, the more you get closer to your own voice.
yeah,
But it can be challenging.
yeah. I think another thing I think about a lot too, and this is like kind of a little further down the line, but I'd really like to like um get more like I'm really excited by the documentary space as well. And like I
Mm,
feel like, like this was like a narrative short that I'm really excited about. And not that I've like completed that genre or that area. I still have so much to learn and so much that I want to do. But I think like I'd love to like kind of because really like when I first got into filmmaking and what like really inspired me to like get into film was like honestly like more things in the documentary space. So I'd love to kind of hop into that as well and kind of like, yeah, just see what stories in the real world, what I can do with those.
Last question. Would you ever do a documentary about an Alaska excursion or kind of working on a boat? Or is
Mm,
that Deadliest Catch? Have they already done that? Is that true to life?
I think I could bring something unique to that. And like, I think Deadliest Catch is like, it is really tense and dramatic out there. So I think that aspects of it are true, but like any reality show, they definitely ramp up that aspects. I think I would love to do like some sort of documentary out there, but kind of do the opposite. And like sort of like I was talking about, like the slow, sort of meditative, like personal aspects of being out there. Like I think that's something that we haven't seen as much of. It's more of like high adrenaline on the boat, like, you know, people are bumping into each other, and that's cool and that's real. But there's also like this like personal, like sort of emotional journey that I think happens out there. And so I'd love to like, I feel like that's where my voice could say something unique in that sort of space. But love Diddley's Catch though.
I've never seen it. I've only seen the trailers, but
Yeah,
it looks
it's a fun
intense.
show. It's a
I
fun
love
show.
watching Gordon Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay. Did you see
Yeah.
the Gordon Ramsay Uncharted? Have you seen that one?
I saw one episode. He was like cooking on a stone.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
was
that's
like,
a
that's
cool
sick.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like Gordon Ramsay, when I watch him, I'm like, he's so mean, right? Or I think people would be like, oh, he's so mean. But I feel like he's also, you know, it's a little bit built up, I think, maybe for a reality
Yeah,
TV
yeah.
show. But I feel like he's also a great leader, right?
Mhm.
He's,
Yeah.
you know, top of his field. But when he's on that show where he's like helping restaurants recover, I always feel,
Kitchen Nightmares.
yeah,
that
he's
one?
being super intense and,
Yeah.
and really hard on people, but he's also trying to save families,
Yeah.
legacy and livelihoods,
Yeah.
you know? So
Totally. I'm a big fan as well.
yeah.
Yeah. I think like even though it looks like really hot-headed, you know, I think on TV, like I think kind of like you're saying, like I think everything he does has like a level of intentionality to it, you know,
Right.
and like he's really, yeah, I think it's all coming from a good place, you know, of,
Yeah,
like
I agree.
getting
That's the best way to
people
say
to
it.
have their stuff together, you know. But
Exactly. Like, you know, it's like a boot camp, kind of getting people in a place and get them
Yeah.
to see like the
yeah,
reality of
yeah,
like
you got to rip the
their
Band-Aid off.
actions. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah, I wouldn't
Um,
want them in my restaurant though. I'll tell you that. You know.
so true. All right,
Yeah.
man. So anything maybe like a signing off? I'm not sure if you have like a website or credentials. I'm sure you're into collaborating. So anything you want to send out onto
Yeah, I think a few things I would say is like kind of you can follow at A Lost Sense on Instagram to kind of stay tuned with like release and festivals updates, which is really exciting. You can follow me at Cole Paul. I post all my work on my website, it's colepaul.com. But yeah, I would love to, you know, if there's any artists, especially in the New England area, but really anywhere that want to collaborate, I'm totally open to all that. And yeah, thanks for having me, Sean. This was awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, likewise.
That was cool. Yeah.